What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the second week of Wilson Auto Detailing's Q&A. As promised, I want to release a weekly question and answer video where my subscribers or my viewers comment, ask me questions, message me questions, and sometimes the questions are just so good that I want to publicly answer them because they're going to help so many more people than just that person that I'm commenting or talking to. So I like to highlight some of y'all's questions, and I'll probably just release these Q&A videos every week in addition to my regular morning video posting. So let's get right into this. So my first question comes from my man Jack Set, and he asks, can you use tap water or hose water or unfiltered water when you're using Optimum No Rinse Wash and Wax or Wash and Shine? And allow me to illustrate that answer with a drawing. Yes, okay? But let me give you a couple stipulations with that, alright? Yes, you can use Optimum No Rinse with unfiltered water, that's fine. And if you're a do-it-yourselfer, that might be what you want to do. As a detailer, and if you're a professional detailer out there, I would suggest you use distilled water because it's just going to make your life easier. And if you're not using distilled water for like money or financial sake, that's not very logical because distilled water costs less than $1 per gallon. And so, if you're not going to use distilled water, a couple things that detailers are going to tell you that you need to be worried about is going to be, number one, unfiltered water or unpurified water is going to have some minerals in it. And so a lot of people would argue that sometimes that increases the risk of scratching because you're using water that just has some sort of minerals in it, and so you're increasing your risk of scratching because you're dragging those across the paint. Another thing that you're gonna have to watch out for is if you're working in the sun and that water dries, then you're gonna have water spots on your hand. Whereas if you use distilled water, you can get the entire car done and you don't have to even think about water spots because there's no minerals inside of distilled water. So if that water dries, there's no minerals left behind. But the simple answer is if you want to use Optimum No Rinse with just tap water, then you can absolutely do that. And if you're just a do-it-yourselfer or you're just doing it in your garage or something, then go ahead. You know, that might be, you know, what you want to do. But as a detailer, and my suggestion to professional detailers is that they should use distilled water because it's just going to make your life easier. From my man Baller Brian for you, which I always love your questions. He asks about the wheel woolies, and he brings up a good point. Is a wheel woolie better for larger brakes? And let me give you guys the context. I'm a huge fan of the Speedmaster wheel brush, which gets in between the spokes of the wheels. It gets the brake dust off the inner barrel of the wheel. And so that brush is great, but when you're dealing with a car that has large brakes, it can be difficult because it's not going to get into certain areas. So to answer that question, yes, you can use a wheel woolly to get into those areas between the brake and between the wheel. It's going to be a very tight space, and smaller brushes are going to do that. But Speedmaster and the Easy Detail company both have a smaller miniature version of their Easy Detail or their Speedmaster brush, which in my opinion is a great thing to use also for engines in tighter spaces like door jams in certain cases. But in certain cases, if the brake is of a certain size, that will actually make it much easier to get in between the space between the wheel and the brake. I think that the wheel woolly's great, or you could go the Speedmaster miniature, the Easy Detail miniature brush. Either route is going to be a great thing. Now my third question comes from my man, Da Brown Rooster. And he asks, what changes do you make without a water source? When you're hooked up, or when you're at a customer's house and you don't have access to water, what changes do you make? I'm gonna try to give you the simple answer to this. Number one, when I'm washing the exterior, just like I posted the video of O&R this morning, I can use Optimum No Rinse and I can bring my distilled water gallon. I don't have to have water to do that. Number two, there's certain areas where it does help to have water, like tire cleaning, wheel cleaning, door jams, and things like that. However, I use the Tornador sometimes to rinse things when I don't have access to water, like a tire, like a wheel, like a door jam. But another great option is to have a pumped or a pressurized bottle. I don't know why I'm blanking on exactly what you call them, but they're like a lot of pesticide killer, or a lot of pesticides are put in these pressurized tanks where you hand pump it and then you can squeeze the trigger, and that is going to create that pressurized tank where you can just have a constant stream of whatever whatever that tank is full of. And you can buy those in all sizes, you know, little, big, and I have one about this big that I will fill full of water. I'll pump it, and then I'll use that as a rinser if I'm not able to kind of have a hose or have a water spigot. I'll fill it up with either distilled water, or if I have a water spigot way far away, I'll go fill it up before I get to the customer's house and bring it with me. And that's a very good way to conserve water. It doesn't shoot out too much, but not too little at one time. It's great at rinsing things when you don't have a water source. But at the end of the day, there's so much advanced technology in the detailing world that you could literally do the entire car without water. But of course, water a lot of times will make your life way easier. Now, I also had a subscriber write in and ask me how to clean brushes and sponges, kind of how to keep them clean when you're not using them or when you get done using them. And honestly, I think the answer to that is very simple. You don't need to overthink it. You don't need to overanalyze it. You can just wash off your brushes with water if you like. In certain cases, you might need to use some soap or a certain type of chemical, but in the grand scheme of things, what I do more often than not is I'll take my wheel well brush, my wheel brush, my tire brush, and when I get done using them on a car, I'll just make sure I rinse them off very, very thoroughly and maybe dunk them in a bucket of water, scrub them out, and wring them out and put them back in their cases, and I don't really have to worry about it. I have my interior detailing caddy with a bunch of different toothbrushes, painter's brushes, makeup brushes, and about every 2 to 3 cars, I'll bring that into my house actually, and I'll actually by hand brush out and soap up and rinse off all of those brushes from the interior of the car because I want to make sure that, you know, those aren't getting too gunked up because I'm using them on some kind of finer things. And so, honestly, answer to that is very simple. Alright, one of my favorite questions today comes from my man Robert Johnson, so I appreciate you. Thank you for writing in. He asks, how do you remove ink stains from headliner? And that is just an awesome question, and I can't promise that I have a great answer. If you are a do-it-yourselfer, this is going to be a very difficult task. If you're a professional detailer and you have some nicer equipment, it might be easier. Headliner is only stuck to the ceiling of your car with some type of adhesive or glue. And so the problem that a lot of people run into, and that a lot of detailers in the past have run into, is that they have sprayed solution onto the headliner, and too much solution at that, and the headliner over time begins to sag or kind of hang down because that adhesive gets weakened or just becomes kind of obsolete because they sprayed so much chemical. And so I'm very careful with my customers when it comes to headliner, and I will only use a certain amount of cleaner before I say, look, if I use any more, I'm afraid I'm going to damage something. And so there's a certain amount of imperfection in the headliner that you might just have to live with. But especially ink spills, ink in general is just difficult, whether it be on the carpet, seats, leather, anything. Ink is a very difficult thing to deal with. Ink sometimes makes me want to bang my head against a wall. Because, number one, everybody wants to get it out. And number two, it might be the hardest thing to get out. So here's what I'm going to offer you in a very quick moment. Number one, have reasonable expectations. Number two, ink sometimes is going to be permanent and there's just not anything anybody can do about it. Number three, a lot of detailers would disagree with me on that and say, no, you can do this, 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 and this. But at the end of the day, ink is so permanent, it's ridiculous. But sometimes it can come out. I don't have a magic solution to get it out. There is a product that's called Rapid Remover, and it is an adhesive remover. In other words, it's a product that people use to remove like stickers from windows. It's kind of like Goo Gone on like 1,000 steroids. It's a very amazing product, and it has an amazing way of just breaking down things that are just sticky or would seem permanent. And Rapid Remover a lot of times can really remove ink. And I will go ahead and put a link in the description box below this video for a bottle of Rapid Remover. It is very pricey, so understand that. But what I would do if I saw ink on a headliner is, number one, I would use an all-purpose cleaner. If that didn't work, I might go for a degreaser. If that doesn't work, I'm gonna take my VX5000 steamer and I'm gonna hit the headliner with my steamer. But once again, most people who are do-it-yourselfers don't have a steamer, and if they do, it's probably not quite as good as the VX5000, and so that's why I say ink can be difficult if you're not a pro detailer, because you might not have the means or the tools to get it out. But at the end of the day, the detailer might not even have the ability to get it out, because that's just the nature of the beast. And of course, my faithful follower slash friend Mad Wax asks, how do you safely clean off the plastic lens covers that are covering the instrument cluster right behind the steering wheel, that cover the speedometer and all that stuff? How do you clean those plastic lenses without scratching them because they're so delicate? Well, once again, I don't think this question needs to be overthought or overanalyzed. Number one, I don't know that I would call that plastic delicate. I don't think that's the word I would use, or fragile. Now, can it be scratched? Well, yes, it can be, but I don't know that it's as fragile as maybe you might think. What I do is, as I'm cleaning the windows with a 50% alcohol, 50% distilled water solution, I'll take a microfiber towel when I'm doing the driver's side window, and I'll take my microfiber towel, spray my 50-50 alcohol water solution, and I'll spray it on my microfiber towel, and I'll just gently rub in a circle on each of those plastic lens covers, and of course that's going to remove any sort of, oils, dust, all that stuff. So that's a very good cleaner. You could also use Meguiar's Quick Interior Detailer, and actually, if you like Optimum No Rinse and you have that pre-diluted in a spray bottle, you could use Optimum No Rinse, and that's going to give them a nice shine actually as well, because it's going to leave a little bit of layer of carnauba wax behind, and that's going to be great for protecting those lens covers in the future as well. And this question comes from MJ Hardy or MJ Handy. I don't remember. I can't read my handwriting. Sorry. MJ Hardy, MJ Handy, one of those. And this is actually, they are a husband-wife detailing duo. How cool is that, right? But they ask what my opinion is on detailing many vehicles in one place at one time. In other words, like somebody who has a big detailing van with a big water tank, a big generator, going to something like an office space and detailing a bunch of those people's cars who work in that office building while they're working and getting many done in one day. And I guess what you're asking is, do you think that that's a good idea? Do you think that's a good way to run your business? Because at the end of the day, it just depends on what you want. If that's what you're after in a detailing business, if you're not after perfection, if you're not after, kind of detailing to the level 10 service, you're just kind of wanting a detailing service that offers a light cleaning, but a good cleaning, and kind of hits the major areas, then go ahead and do it. And honestly, I think you actually highlight a greater point in that there are a lot of detailers who really limit themselves because they so have fixed it in their head that they're gonna do a level 10 every time. It's all or nothing. I'm either gonna make the car look perfect or I don't want your business. And so they actually lose business because some people who want their car detailed, they're not interested in having it cotton swab clean. That's not what they're after, and they don't want to pay for that. And so to only provide a level 10 service is really, in my opinion, kind of not a good idea, because you're limiting your customer, base. You're limiting the clientele that you're going to be able to bring in. And if your customer doesn't want perfection, well, why would you try to force that on them? It's less work for you. You're still making great money, and you don't have to quite put as much attention and focus as you would otherwise, but you're still making great money. So why would you not want that? And so the way I run business, at least, I always put some type of authority and control in the customer's hand and say, look, I'm gonna go level 10 unless you tell me otherwise, but I'm also gonna charge level 10. But if you're not quite as interested in the door jams, or you're not quite as interested in level 10, I'll spend less time here, here, and here, more time here, here, and here, and give you what you want, and we'll do it at about this price range. So there's a place to be able to work with a customer and kind of adjust to what they want and not have to kind of force this level 10 or perfect, mindset that you have onto them. And the very last question was a question kind of regarding how do you clean wheels that are like aluminum or things like that. And I think it just needs to be understood that all, factory stock wheels that come on cars, when you buy a car off the lot, the wheels that come on that car are going to be aluminum most of the time, but they're going to have a clear coat layer that surrounds them. Just like there's a clear coat that surrounds your car paint, there's going to be a clear coat layer on the wheels. And so the issue with cleaning wheels that don't have that clear coat is that you can't just grab a wheel cleaner off the shelf and spray it onto an unclear coated wheel, because it's a much more delicate thing. I've got one client who has a Jeep, a 1979 Jeep Wrangler, and that wheel is not clear coated, it's just straight aluminum, exposed aluminum pretty much. And so I don't ever use Meguiar's wheel brightener or any sort of wheel cleaner like that on that wheel, because if you do that, you're going to damage the wheel. Unless it's clear coated, you're going to damage the wheel. So to clean aluminum, aluminum wheels that are just exposed with no clear coat, number one, you can get dedicated like aluminum wheel cleaners that are actually for that. They're a little expensive to get really a good one in my opinion, but you can definitely do that. Just Google it. I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer. You can just Google that and buy that. But what you're going to want to follow up with pretty much every time is a aluminum wheel polish, because as you apply even water to exposed aluminum wheels, you're going to see kind of like this staining that happens that isn't permanent, and it might freak you out at first, but it's just because that aluminum reacts with that water, it almost looks like fingerprints or like just a staining that happens. And so every time you clean it, you're probably going to want to follow up with a quick layer of polish that you can just apply with a microfiber towel by hand, rub it in. It's kind of difficult to polish aluminum wheels because you have to put so much elbow grease, but it is something that's very doable, and it's really not that big a deal. So really the best advice I would give you is when you clean those wheels with a specific aluminum wheel cleaner, definitely follow up with a aluminum wheel polish. Now guys, I hope you enjoyed this week 2 of Wilson Auto Detailing's Q&A, where you guys write in questions and I answer them to the best of my ability and my experience. I would like to give a shout out to my man Mike CA98. Just want to say I appreciate you subscribing and following and commenting. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Henry R. Henry R is a new detailer. He wrote into me saying, I'm a little discouraged, I'm a little frustrated, I'm not getting the results I want. Henry, I just wanted to say, don't get discouraged, man. Every detailer starts out the same way, and you know what? It takes a little bit to get your feet on the ground. It takes a little bit to really get your bearings and figure out exactly your strategy, but just keep at it. Don't quit. Stay encouraged, and man, I promise you will know exactly what your strategy is and how you kind of attack things personally. It's going to get way better. Thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure to follow me on Instagram or Facebook. Instagram is going to be wilson.auto.detailing, and Facebook is just facebook.com/Wilson Auto Detailing. And guys, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure to link those up in the comment section below. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And once again, if you're new here, consider subscribing, because I come out with daily videos for tips and tricks, not only for the professional detailers, but also for the do-it-yourselfers, on products to use, tools to use, strategies to implement, communication skills, business skills, and so much more. So if you're new, consider subscribing. And guys, from Luke here at Wilson Auto Detailing, I will catch you guys next time.